Hello, everyone. That was actually a very good, cool transition videos. Like the team has done an impressive job. But hey, guys, my name is Ren. I am a product owner from SCB 10X, and I am the host with you here today. And let me introduce you guys to our speaker, Rudy Lee. So just a quick introduction. So Rudy is the Chief Strategy Officer at NeighborZ, which is a company that built Zepeto, a global avatar platform with more than 200 million users worldwide. And prior to that, Rudy co-founded a company called VRX Lab. I hope I'm saying that right. An AR startup using avatars for content creations. And the company was later acquired by Korea's Naver Group. He also co-founded the international production company called 37th Degree, which won the Silver Lions Award at the Venice Film Festival, one of the big three film festival, I think. And Rudy began his career as a director and a producer, working on several different films and TV projects. Interestingly, he also served as a speechwriter and interpreter to the Defense Minister of Korea. Rudy holds a degree in comparative literature and visual arts from Princeton. So how's it going, Rudy?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Great. So it's one thing that we noticed. So what's the avatar like? How does it work? Like, how does it morph to your face?
Right. So this is an AR filter, and it's actually a Snapchat filter. So it's very easy to do. All you have to do is download the Snap Camera app for your laptop, and then change the setting on your Zoom so that the video input is from the Snap Camera. And then on the Snap Camera, you can go through many of the different filters that you want to use. For me, I like using this cartoon filter because it reminds me of Zepeto.
Right. So like you kind of have like a different camera setup on the side.
Well, actually, no. I'm just using the laptop camera, except
okay.
Right. But it's the Zoom application is perceiving the Snap Camera video feed as its video input source.
Right. That's very cool. Like, does it like kind of morph the features of your face a little bit, make it looks a bit like you, or it's completely different thing?
Well, I think so. I think it looks probably a little bit different, but it's not super custom. But yeah, I'm sure if you tried it, maybe it'd be a little bit different.
Right. That's very cool. That's very cool. Great. Yeah. So I think like before we start the sessions, like I think there's one thing that pops up from your experience, right? So I think you have a very interesting career, having founded multiple different companies from different fields. But I want to bring it back to the university time a little bit. So what did you study at Princeton? Like I read comparative literature and visual arts. That's a very interesting degree. Do you want to tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Didn't expect us to go through my previous personal experiences. It's fine. It's cool. Yeah. So comparative literature is like a relatively young branch of the humanities. In my opinion, and not trying to offend anyone who studied comparative literature, but in my opinion, it's kind of like the experiment lab of the humanities. So whatever is hard to kind of categorize into, let's say, English literature or philosophy or religion or history, a lot of that can be categorized into comparative literature. It's a field that kind of gained momentum during the Cold War because the United States government wanted to fund research into the Soviet culture. And so that kind of meant, knowing more about Soviet literature, religion, history, things like that. So I think it kind of, got some momentum then. But basically, you're comparing different things and trying to find out what is the common points and what are the differences. So a typical example could be, French poetry from the 19th century and 18th century British novels or something like that. Or something a little bit more experimental could be comparing a particular genre of films to a particular genre of novels or, or even religion or history or, paintings, music. It's really anything. And I think that kind of becomes more important even as, in the tech world, many things are cross-platform, cross-chain. So the ability, or at least the interest in trying to learn what is different and what is common and how do you connect different things is an interesting thing that I guess this field kind of tries to get its students to think about.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very wide range of diversified different topics that probably helps a lot on your background in terms of building different kind of companies from 37th degree to now Zepeto. Right. So that brings us back to the topics, right? So like Metaverse, right? So you work at Zepeto. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it does and how does it work? Tell me about a bit more about the company.
Yeah. So I think from a product standpoint, it's kind of a hybrid between a Roblox and a TikTok because and it actually kind of started out a little bit more like TikTok, like an avatar TikTok. So our parent company is a company called Snow. It's famous for the Snow camera app, which is basically like the Snapchat of Asia. And we also have built many other, different types of consumer apps that are doing well. And a few years ago, about 3 years ago, we looked at the existing avatar applications and we thought that aesthetically, at least, there could be something better. So we wanted to give it a shot, and we wanted to come out with something that has slicker aesthetics. So that was the version 1 of Zepeto. And we didn't expect this, but it just really took off almost immediately. Within the 3rd month or 4th month, we were getting like 8 million downloads a month. It's just very organically. We typically don't spend marketing dollars in the first couple of years in any product. So, we were spending $0 on marketing and we were getting like a lot of organic downloads. And, I remember a point when, maybe 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 teenagers or 20 somethings had their profile pictures on WeChat and Line and Kakao as their Zepeto avatars. So that's kind of when we first thought that this could become something bigger. And so then we decided to add like a social feed, the 3D Roblox kind of world element. And then, we added a lot of things since then. But it's kind of like a TikTok meets Roblox kind of a platform. Yeah, and it's just very Gen Z focused. About it depends on the region, but generally speaking, I would say about 80 to 90% of our users are teenagers and early to mid 20 somethings. So it's a very young audience that we're targeting.
Right, that's actually very interesting, right? You mentioned that most of your customers are basically Gen Z's people and early 20s. Did you have any plan to bringing Zepeto into a more of a mainstream media, or do you think it should be targeting the younger audience and kind of like slowly grow from there?
Well, I think it's a complicated, not a complicated, but I think there's a lot of layers to it because from a social network perspective, I think 100% of the big social media platforms were always driven by young people. Snapchat, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, everything that is big. It started out by gaining a core user base that is heavily reliant on teenagers. And then in order to follow that new trend, you have older people kind of coming onto the platform. And then as the platform grows and you tap into other demographics and become something like Facebook, which is now like, every age group. So I think from that perspective, we would want and expect our, age groups to kind of reach a higher audience. But, I think probably for the short term, we wouldn't necessarily try to target like 30 somethings or 40 somethings aggressively. I think we would try to kind of double down on the audience bracket that we have. So that's one side of it. But then the other thing is, from a metaverse perspective, from a platform perspective, what we aspire to build is something that is very comprehensive and accommodating. We want to build a platform that is for everyone. And one of the things that is really kind of inspiring for us is we have quite a lot of 40 somethings and maybe even 50 somethings that are familiar with Zepeto or even users of Zepeto. And that's because their children use Zepeto. Sometimes it's their grandchildren. So because their children use Zepeto and they spend money on Zepeto, they want to know what this is and they check it out. And then oftentimes they realize that if they are on Zepeto, then this can become a means of bonding and communicating with their children. So, from that perspective, in trying to build a more inclusive community, from that perspective, then we are very invested in trying to reach these, higher age groups.
That's very interesting. Like, so I'm curious. So when I guess the parents or the grandparents, when they make their avatar, do they try to make it generally more towards the age group, or do they try to make themselves a lot younger?
Well, so funny story is we raised a Series B last summer that was led by SoftBank's Vision Fund. And in the process, I pitched to Masa, and we got in a meeting, and I introduced Zepeto, and we talked about it, and we tried to get him his Masa avatar, Zepeto avatar. We tried to create one and show this to him in the video, and we realized in that process that we don't have hairstyles or many things or wrinkles that are kind of catering to an older audience. We kind of do, but we don't have a lot of it, and we thought that's maybe an area that we should kind of expand on. So a lot of the designs that you see for the avatars, they are much more kind of younger. But I think it's interesting to have different kind of looks that can represent different age groups.
Right. That's very cool. So I think I want to bring the conversation towards a bit more towards today's topic. So I think what's your definition of metaverse, right? So I think generally the definition is very vague, and different people have different opinions on it. Like, what's your definition?
Right. Yeah. So I think if you look at social media, for example, social media can have different forms, right? You can have an audio-based thing like Clubhouse. You can have a visual-based thing like Instagram or TikTok, or text-based like Twitter or Facebook. So the specific packaging can be different, but I think there's some commonalities that can help to define what a particular genre is. So my subjective understanding of the metaverse is based on three things. One is it has to be interactive, in real time. It has to be interactive. You need to be able to talk and meet other users, other people, right? The second thing is that independence needs to be guaranteed, by which I mean you need to be able to decide what you want to do when you want to do it in a metaverse, because that is more or less what that freedom of choice is what we have in physical life. It should be mirrored in the metaverse as well, which is actually why, for me, I consider games, less of a metaverse kind of a product, because in games you have set goals and you have set kind of rules. You do have rules and you do have goals in many different non-game products, but it's more so the case for games. So I think there's less freedom. So in my opinion, less of a metaverse. And then the third thing is it's incentivization, incentives, which means you need to be able to make money and engage in economic activities on whatever metaverse platform you're a part of. Because at the end of the day, we have 24 hours in a day. You can spend that time sleeping, eating on the metaverse, playing games, whatever. But the more time you spend on something, it's better justified if you can monetize that time somehow and be rewarded so that you can spend more and more time on this and develop your own career or life on that particular product. So I think that money aspect, the incentivization, is also a very, very defining factor of the metaverse.
Right. So kind of like bringing some part of the real world meat space economy towards online, right?
Yeah. I think we already have we have different forms of it already, but yes, all these
and everything.
all of that, and we're in a transitional period, but things that you do in the physical world can be mirrored in the virtual world. So very quick example, in Zepeto, we have people that are making like $500,000-$600,000 a year by designing and selling their virtual clothing items. These are people that are interested in fashion design, but they're not doing that in the real world, so they're doing it here. So they're living their careers, like the careers that they thought they would want to do in the physical world, they're living that here. And it's the same for architects, people that are not working at architecture firms, but have a degree in architecture or interior design. They're making virtual building and landscapes and virtual houses and getting paid to do that in Zepeto. And the list goes on and on, singing, influencer, like all of that stuff. So I think we will see a lot of these mirror situations.
Right. I see. Amazing. Yeah. So I think right now, there's multiple different companies working on, metaverses, right? There's like Facebook changing their name to Meta. There's gaming companies like Fortnite, coming to the game. What do you think is the biggest opportunities in the, I guess, social metaverse platform right now?
I think it's, again, this is my personal point of view, but I feel like the last point, the economy, I think, is a very, very big point. I think it's probably the most important thing. If you can be compensated for your creative work, or even just hanging out and play to earn, I think that's huge. And again, because you need to be able to spend more time on it. And if you spend less time working, quote unquote working, then you have less money. But if you can cover that gap with, this metaverse stuff, then you're set. So I think the products that will succeed are products that offer a sufficient social setting, meaning like enough users and enough features for users to talk to each other in different ways, but then that must be packaged with an economic framework. So whoever figures out like the optimum ways to compensate users while having this kind of a sustainable business model is going to be probably a front runner in this race.
I think that kind of like naturally extends to a very interesting topics, I think, in my opinion, is that, because we have to find ways to try to incentivize people to use, work on the metaverse side of things, try to monetize things. I think one interesting technology that can be included is, the blockchain technologies, right? So we see companies like the Sandbox, Decentraland, getting into the space. What do you think is the role of blockchain technology plays in the context of metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, we've seen a lot of things, NFTs, DAOs, and then reward tokens, all these secondary tokens that are coming off of the base currencies, right? The XLPs, things like, the SLPs and things like that for the AXS. So I think there are a lot of different things that is interesting and definitely usable in the greater blockchain ecosystem, where it pertains to Metaverse and its creators and users and influencers. So I think it'll have some part to play. The challenge probably lies in the fact that because just of how nascent the blockchain industry is, from an infrastructure standpoint, security, speed, integration with Web 2, a lot of things are still not there. They're in the process, but it's not there. So I think that's the challenge, because it's easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's relatively easier for a Web 2 company like us or Meta to have, hundreds of millions of users. But for Web 3 companies to operate at that scale right now, it is very challenging. So I think over time, things will change. But blockchain has a definite part to play in terms of unlocking economic benefits and unlocking freedom and governance and all of those things. But from an infrastructural standpoint and a technical standpoint, I think it still has a little bit of ways to go. So there should be some kind of balance in between.
Right. So essentially, it's I think so probably the onboarding experience, right? Getting an average user to install MetaMask or any of the wallets is actually quite difficult, and then you have to transfer money, virtual currencies into the system, and then you have to trust the system. There's understanding between gas fees and everything. So I think it's a pretty high bar to climb, but I agree with you on over time there's going to be a balance of how do we bring newer people into the blockchain space, and then also from the infrastructure perspective of the Web 2 side on how do we merge the Web 2 and the Web 3 worlds as a transition period, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The on-ramp is certainly another big hurdle. But again, provided that the overall Web3 ecosystem and the major players involved continue to aggressively invest and work towards smoothing out these issues, provided that happens, I think we will see Web3 becoming a lot more mainstream. I think if it advances well enough, then it could be kind of like looking back in time, when and there was a time when people thought, why would you stream movies? Like the authentic way to watch movies is to go to a movie theater. Or why would you meet someone online and swipe left or swipe right? The authentic way is to go to bars or hang out with real people physically and then meet up. So, but none of that is the case. So I think there will be a transition, provided that all these external factors kind of fall in place.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree on that. Yeah. So I think we might have to wrap up for today. We have 1 minute left. Thanks a lot for the great chat, Rudy. I think for the audience, if you're interested on what the Metaverse hype is all about, you can download the Zepeto app from the app stores and the Google Play stores, and give it a try yourself. And yeah, all right. Thanks a lot, Rudy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ren.
All right, see you around.
See you in the Metaverse.
See you. Yes, for sure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.